When my daughter-in-law told me to leave her home, I smiled instead of crying. It wasn't because I was strong. It was because my tears had already dried long before that day. I had spent years swallowing small hurts, pretending they didn't sting, convincing myself that family love was worth every little silence, every little bruise on the heart. I still remember her voice that morning. Calm, polite, almost careful. "Mama, maybe it's time you go back to your own place," she said. The way she avoided my eyes told me she had practiced those words. My hands trembled as I folded the kitchen towel I was holding. I could smell the rice cooking, the faint sweetness of soap on her hands. Everything felt so ordinary, yet my whole world had shifted. I didn't answer right away. I looked around the house, my son's house, the one I helped him build brick by brick. I remembered painting the nursery walls when my grandson was born. I remembered holding him while she rested. I remembered every small thing I did quietly, not to be praised, just to be part of their life. Now all those memories felt like guests who had overstayed their welcome. I wanted to ask, why now? But deep down, I already knew. I had seen it coming in the way she sighed when I offered to help in the kitchen, in the way my son hesitated before inviting me to family outings, in the way they whispered behind closed doors, thinking I couldn't hear. I had told myself it was just stress, just life. But the truth was, I had become a shadow in their home. Days like that repeated, soft corrections, polite distance, careful silences. I started counting the times he called me Mama. It used to be every day. Now, sometimes she'd just say Mary. And then came the evening that changed everything. It was raining, soft, steady rain tapping against the window. I was sitting in the living room, knitting a scarf for Noah. The house was unusually quiet. Claire came in and sat across from me. Her hands were clasped, her lips tight. I looked up and smiled, but she didn't smile back. "Can we talk, Mama?" she said softly. Something inside me knew that this was the moment I had been dreading. She sat across from me, her fingers twisting the edge of her sleeve. Her voice trembled a little when she spoke. "Mama, I hope you know how much we appreciate everything you've done." I smiled faintly and said, "Of course, dear. You don't need to thank me." She hesitated, then continued, "It's just that things have been a bit difficult lately. I feel like the house has been a little crowded, and I need some space to raise Noah in my own way." Her words were careful, polite, but they landed heavy. I could hear my own heartbeat. "I understand," I whispered. "You want your own space." She nodded quickly, relieved that I hadn't made it harder. "Yes, I hope you don't take it the wrong way. You've been wonderful, truly, but I think it's time for you to go back home for a while. Maybe just until we figure things out." I looked around the room, the living room I had dusted and cleaned, the home where I had folded their laundry, cooked their meals, and tucked their child into bed. I saw Noah's toys scattered on the floor, one of them a small stuffed bear I had sewn myself. I thought of how many nights I'd stayed awake when he had a fever, holding his tiny hand until he fell asleep. And now, all of it felt like someone else's memory. I took a deep breath and smiled gently, though I could feel the sting in my chest. "All right, Claire," I said softly. "If that's what you think is best." She looked surprised, maybe even guilty. "You're not angry?" I shook my head. "No, dear, I've lived long enough to know that love sometimes means stepping back. I just hope Noah won't forget me too soon." She blinked quickly and stood up, muttering something about dinner. But I could tell her eyes were wet. So I nodded. I said, "All right, dear. I understand." My voice surprised even me. It was calm, almost gentle. I turned to pack my things, moving slowly so they wouldn't see how my heart was breaking. When my son came home that evening, I was sitting by the window with my suitcase beside me. He looked tired, confused. "Mama, what's going on?" he asked. His wife stood behind him, her hands clasped, her face pale. Each item I folded carried a story. The shawl my husband bought me before he passed away. The little sweater I knitted for my grandson's first birthday. The framed picture of all of us together, smiling like nothing could ever change. I smiled again, the same smile I wore the day she asked me to leave. "It's all right," I said softly. "You have your family now. I'll be fine." But deep inside, I wasn't fine. I was a mother trying not to break in front of her child. When Michael came home later that evening, I was already in my room packing quietly. He walked in, confused. "Mama, what's going on?" I turned to him and smiled, though my eyes burned. "Nothing, son. Claire and I talked. She feels it's time I head back home." He looked at me, then at the suitcase, and his shoulders slumped. "You don't have to go," he said, but his voice lacked strength. It was the kind of sentence people say when they wish things were different, but no, they aren't. I reached out and touched his arm. "It's all right, Michael. You have your family now. You need to build your own world." He stood there for a moment, torn between his mother and his wife. And then, quietly, he said, "Let me help you pack." That broke me. Not because of what he said, but because I could see he was trying to be strong, just like me. We didn't talk much as we packed. The sound of rain filled the silence. I wrapped my shawl, the one David had given me, and placed it carefully in the bag. Each item I folded felt like a small goodbye. Later, Noah came running into the room. "Grandma, where are you going?" he asked, his big eyes full of confusion. I knelt down and held his tiny face in my hands. "Grandma has to go home for a little while, my love. But I'll come visit, all right?" He frowned. "But you live here." I smiled through tears. "I used to, sweetheart. Now it's your mommy and daddy's turn." He hugged me tight, his small arms wrapping around my neck. "Don't go," he whispered. I held him close, breathing in the scent of his hair, trying to memorize the warmth of that hug. "I'll always be with you, even if I'm not here," I whispered back. When he finally let go, I knew it was time. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat by the window, watching the rain slide down the glass, the same rain that had been falling since afternoon. I thought about David, how he would have handled this, how he would have told me to hold my head high. And then morning came, quiet, gray, and still. I placed my suitcase by the door. The house was asleep. I didn't want goodbyes. But as I reached for the handle, I heard Noah's little voice. "Grandma?" He was standing at the top of the stairs, holding his bear. "You forgot my bedtime story," he said. Tears welled up, blurring my vision. I walked to him, knelt, and kissed his forehead. "You already know all my stories, little one," I whispered. "Just close your eyes and remember them." Then I turned and walked out into the soft morning rain. The rain followed me all the way home. It felt like the sky was weeping for me, soft, endless tears that matched the ones I kept inside. The taxi ride was quiet. The driver didn't ask questions. Maybe he could tell I wasn't in the mood for words. I stared out the window, watching the world blur past. Familiar streets that once felt alive now looked empty, like I was seeing them for the first time. When I reached my old house, I stood at the gate for a long moment. The garden was overgrown, the paint on the fence had started to peel. But the place still smelled like home, a faint mix of rain, earth, and memories. I turned the key and stepped inside. The air was cold, still. My footsteps echoed. I placed my suitcase near the couch and sat down. The silence pressed against me. I wanted to hear laughter, voices, the sound of little feet running down the hallway. But there was only the ticking of the clock. That first night was the hardest. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, just like I used to when David was gone. Only this time, the loneliness felt deeper, heavier. I thought of Noah. I wondered if he was asking about me. I wondered if Michael was thinking about his mother sitting alone in an old house. The next morning, I forced myself to get up early. I opened the curtains, swept the floor, and made tea. I told myself I wouldn't let sadness win. But as the days went by, the silence became my companion. Sometimes I'd sit by the window and imagine Noah running into the garden, his laughter echoing in the air. I'd close my eyes and almost hear it. Then I'd remember the way he hugged me that last morning, and my heart would tighten all over again. Michael called a few times. His voice was careful. "How are you, Mama?" he'd ask. "I'm fine, dear," I'd reply. Always the same answer, always a lie. Once, I thought I heard Claire in the background, talking softly to Noah. I wanted to ask to speak to him, but I didn't. I didn't want to make things harder. Weeks turned into months. I filled my days with small things, tending to the garden, knitting scarves for the church, cooking meals I barely finished. People from the neighborhood would wave and say hello, but I could see the sympathy in their eyes. They must have heard the story. One Sunday afternoon, as I was sitting on the porch, I saw a small car stop outside my gate. For a moment, I thought my heart had tricked me, but then I saw him, my son, standing there in the sunlight. He looked older than I remembered, tired, but softer somehow. He walked up to me and smiled faintly. "Hi, Mama." I stood up, unsure what to say. "Michael, what are you doing here?" "I came to see you," he said quietly. "It's been too long." We sat together on the porch. For a while, neither of us spoke. The sound of birds filled the silence. Then he took a deep breath. "I should have done more," he said. "I should have stood up for you that day." I shook my head. "No, son. You did what you had to do. You were protecting your home." Tears filled his eyes. "It didn't feel like home after you left." I reached for his hand and squeezed it gently. Life doesn't always go the way we hope. People need time to grow into understanding. Maybe one day, Claire will see it differently too. He nodded slowly. "She wanted to come today," he said, "but she was scared you wouldn't want to see her." I looked at him for a long moment, then smiled softly. "Tell her I don't hold anger in my heart." I never did. He turned his head away, wiping his eyes. "Noah misses you," he whispered. "He asks for you almost every night." At that, my heart swelled with both pain and joy. "I miss him too," I said. More than words can say. We sat there until the sun began to set, talking about small things, the garden, his work, the new school Noah was attending. For the first time in months, I laughed. It felt strange and beautiful at the same time. Before he left, he hugged me tightly, just like he used to when he was little. "I'll bring them next time," he said. After he drove away, I stayed on the porch, watching the stars appear one by one. The night was quiet, but it no longer felt empty. Something inside me had softened. A few weeks after Michael's visit, I was watering the garden when I heard the sound of a car outside. I wiped my hands on my apron and looked toward the gate, the same small car. But this time, when the door opened, it wasn't just Michael who stepped out. Claire was with him, and little Noah ran ahead, his arms wide open. "Grandma," he shouted, his voice cutting through the quiet morning like sunlight. Before I could even move, he was in my arms, laughing, talking all at once, telling me about school, about his new toy car, about how much he missed my pancakes. I held him close, breathing him in, my heart trembling with 1,000 unsaid words. When I looked up, Claire was standing by the gate. Her hands were clasped, her eyes uncertain. She looked smaller somehow, not in size, but in spirit. I could see she had carried something heavy for a long time. She walked toward me slowly. "Mama," she said softly, "I hope it's all right that we came." I nodded, my voice caught in my throat. "You're always welcome here." For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then she said, "I wanted to say, I'm sorry for how things ended, for the way I made you feel." Her voice cracked, and I could see the tears she was holding back. I reached for her hand and squeezed it gently. "You were young, dear. You were finding your place. Sometimes we all stumble while learning how to love each other." She nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks. I thought I was doing what was best for my family, but I didn't realize I was breaking something precious. I smiled faintly. Families bend sometimes. The love doesn't disappear. It just waits for us to come back to it. Noah tugged at my sleeve. Are you coming home with us, Grandma? I looked at him and then at Claire. Maybe one day soon, sweetheart, I said. But for now, it's good that we can visit each other. We spent the afternoon together cooking, laughing, sharing small stories. Claire helped me prepare lunch. She even asked for one of my recipes, and that simple act meant more than she could ever know. When they left later that evening, I stood by the gate, waving as the car disappeared down the road. The air was cool, the sky painted in gold and pink. I closed my eyes and let the breeze touch my face. It was then I realized love doesn't end when you're asked to leave. It doesn't fade just because you're no longer needed in the same way. True love changes form. It finds a quieter home inside you. That night, I sat on the porch with a cup of tea. The garden rustled softly in the wind. I thought about David, about Michael, about Claire and Noah. My heart felt full, not perfect, not healed entirely, but whole enough. I whispered into the night, "You were right, David. I am strong." But not because I never fell apart, because I learned to stand again, gently. And that's the truth of it. Life will hand us moments that bruise the soul. Sometimes the people we love the most will ask us to step aside, and it will feel like the world has ended. But it hasn't. It's just changing shape. If you can forgive, if you can love without bitterness, you'll find that what was broken can still hold light. So tonight, as I close my eyes, I'm thankful for the home I lost, for the home I found again within myself, and for the lesson life quietly taught me. You don't stop being a mother, even when no one calls you that anymore.